Between 2020 and 2023, 11,200 women and girls in Nigeria were victims of sexual assault. Society believes that when a woman is raped, that she is to be blamed and that she's responsible for the rape and for the crime perpetrated against her, against her own body. Then you begin to hear questions like, oh, why did she wear that kind of dress? Oh, the dress was revealing. Why did she go to meet him in a private place? Why did she go there at night? Different questions, just trying to justify the act that has been meted against the women. We usually forget that a rapist is nothing but a rapist. A rapist rapes anyone irrespective of age, appearance, dress. It can be anything. In the last episode, we mentioned that a rapist is usually known. Yes, people close to you. Yes, it happens with strangers, but sometimes, or a lot of times actually, there are people who are very, very close to you. Very, very close to you. It could be your brother, your uncle, your father, a friend, imam, pastor, family friend, colleague, or even your neighbor. Yes, these people are very, very close to you. Today, we'll be discussing how to support rape survivors and holding rapists accountable. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. My name is Esther Alaribe, and my guest today is Dr. Mercy Munyali Kwabe, editor at Stand to End Rape Initiative in Abuja. We spoke to women in your community about supporting survivors and holding rapists accountable. Let's hear what the women have to say.
Some reasons why I feel say society they look away, they condemn these rapists. Now because if it be different reasons, if it be they don't want to they confront the truth. Like in case where be okay, maybe na the mama brother rape the pikin, it go hard make she want make she believe that kind of thing. She go say, how my brother go rape my pikin. She no go believe him. She no go won't believe him because na family member be that. So na some reasons why they fit no.
Ọ̀nà àbáyọ ni pé ká sa gbogbo ipá wa láti tẹ àwọn tí wọ́n bá ní àjọṣepọ̀ yìí láti tẹ̀ wọ́n nínú láti jẹ́ kó máa sọ̀rọ̀ síta torí ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ nínú wọn ojú tí a ti sọ̀rọ̀ yìí àbí ẹ̀rù láti sọ ẹni tó fẹ́ sọ fún pé irú kan báyìí ó ṣẹlẹ̀ sí ó máa ń le fún wọn. So ká pẹ̀tù sí wọn lọ́kàn kán sọ nǹkan tó bá ṣe wọ́n. And secondly, ẹni tó bá ti rí pé ẹni yìí òun ló ṣiṣẹ́ ibi yìí kíjọba kan dájọ́ burúkú fún.
Women are most victims of sexual harassment because they lack the self-confidence and they're socialized to suffer in silence. And you know what they say? The culture of rape actually thrives on the culture of silence. When you hear that a child or woman is raped, you hear things like, don't tell anybody. You ask a couple of children around who have been raped. The rapist says, don't tell anybody. If you tell your mother, I'll kill you. If you tell your father, I'll beat you up. Thereby instilling a lot of fear in their mind. On today's episode, we'll discuss how to support rape survivors and holding rapists accountable. My guest today is Mercy. Hello, Mercy. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Esther. Thank you for having me today.
Yes.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you clearly, Mercy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay.
Okay, Mercy. Now let's start off with this one. Why do you think that the society blames women when they are raped?
Oh, thank you for that interesting question. I like that. And also thank you for the preceding interviews as well, because I think that spoke a lot to why women are always blamed for sexual assault. I mean, it's embedded in the culture of patriarchy that we have built as a society. And to follow the, the history of patriarchy, it can be dated back to mostly the Industrial Revolution, which brought about gender roles, right? So that's why you see that people think it is okay for a man to be outside. He can be outside the house as late as 1 a.m. But you, as a woman, if you're outside as late as 1 a.m., it becomes a problem, right? Because there have been gender roles embedded in patriarchy that now define how women are supposed to be and how women are supposed to act. And that's why it's never weird when a man says, oh, I'm going to visit a woman. But the moment a woman says, I'm going to visit a man, everybody says, oh, what if this happens? But why should I be scared? Yeah. Right? So most times you find that society often blames women, right, when they are raped due to deep gender stereotypes that we find. And there's also the victim blaming culture as well, right? And we don't see this with other crimes. For instance, I always say this, when somebody has been robbed, nobody's going to say, oh, why were you there? Why were you holding this property? So you also see that there's a problem in classification of the crime, right? Where most people don't also believe that it is a crime against humanity. They believe that both parties, both the perpetrator and the survivor, have a role to play in the crime. And that's not it. So you find these stereotypes and victim blaming culture. Sometimes you'll see that they basically move from blaming the perpetrator to blaming the victim. And you ask, why are you blaming the victim? You're focusing entirely on the wrong thing. And some people will actually tell you that it's because, let's not ruin the life of the perpetrator. But the perpetrator has ruined somebody else's life, so shouldn't there be consequences for these actions? So that's why at NCMJ, like, we are very survivor focused, right? We try to tend to the needs of our survivors, to tell them that the whole world might not be able to give you what you need. They might not believe you, they might not give you the support. But here we give you the support, whether it's legal, whether it's psychological, whatever support you need. Because again, our society embedded in patriarchy means that most of these things most of the blame would go to the victim.
All right, thank you very, very much, Mercy, because that was extensive. Now, why do you think, or what is the reason that you think that our society tends to look away from condemning these perpetrators, especially for cases of rape? Because over time, you hear people talk about how they've been raped, and just like you've mentioned, somebody's saying, oh, let's not ruin this person's life. Oh, don't speak about it. Oh, this person is going on to study. If you do this now, it's going to hinder their progress. And I'm wondering, what about the woman who suffered the receiving end? What happens to her?
So I would say that there are a couple of things that add to that. First of all is precedence, right? If you have a society where people commit a crime and nothing is done, where there's impunity, the undertone of what you're doing there is that you're saying it's okay. It's like corruption, for example. You catch somebody for meddling in corrupt practices, and they're looking like, oh my God, like other people do it. Why are you persecuting me when everybody else does it? So I think that's one of the problems here, right? There's precedence of always excusing the perpetrator. Oh, boys will be boys. Right? This is part of growing up. I did a preliminary study once where I asked 90 men when their first sexual experience was, and they all mentioned that it was between the ages of 7 and 14. And the next question that followed was, did you feel abused? And you should see the responses. Most people came out and said, oh no, like it was something to brag about to their friends. So you see that precedence, and you can see the double standards already manifesting, right? Where there is a different way of looking at even sexual violence committed towards boys. I'm talking about children now, right? Sexual violence committed towards girls. In a classroom setting, I asked my students, especially the guys, can you tell your fellow boys if you've been sexually assaulted? And they laugh. Then I asked them, if your female counterpart call you and say, I've been sexually assaulted, how would you react? They were like, oh no, we will fight, we will try and find the perpetrator. So you see that from an early age already, right? The double standard has been set for who is abused and who is not, or who can be a victim rather. So you'll find that one of the reasons why society actually excuses this is because who really can be a victim? Most people think it's just women. But records show, especially in times of war, that anybody, and I mean anybody, no matter the gender you identify as, can be a victim. There's also the excuses that come from society, that they say, oh, you know, what was she wearing? Why were you there? Why did you invite him? Why did you why did you accept the invitation? Don't you know what happens? But then nobody ever thinks that they will be assaulted, right? Nobody ever thinks that this will happen to them. And if somebody is agreeing to be in the same space with you, it means that there's a level of trust that they've allotted to you. I also think that another problem that we have is understanding consent and the extent to which consent extends. Some people think consent today is consent tomorrow. But that's not what it is. People can change. The same way you are not the same person you were 2-3 days ago. It's the same way people's decisions can change. And I think these are some of the reasons why society looks away from condemning perpetrators, because they also believe that both the victim and the perpetrator are equally to blame.
All right. Thank you very much, Mercy, really. Unmasking the Truth on your radio station today is addressing supporting survivors and holding rapists accountable. This program is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Of course, we love to hear from the women. Let's go back on the streets and hear from more women.
You know, say the society don't coin women as subject to rape and assault and molestation. The only thing we fit tell them, we say life no end. So make them move on with their life. That one no be the end of the world. So now waiting I feel advise them with that.
We fit hold rapists accountable, push governments to enforce laws where they don't put already against rape victims. We fit do them through education. We could teach people for school. We fit help survivors too. That one safe day.
So we found out that there are 4 types of rapists: the angry rapist, the power-drunk rapist, the sadist rapist, and the opportunistic rapist. Now, these rapists, they select their victims based on closeness, availability, and access to their homes. Rapists are driven by a combination of power, anger, and sexuality. Anger rapists are very hostile in sexual act. Then the ones who are power drunk, they're after some kind of conquest, subjugation. Then sadist, this rapist just looks at violence and sex. Unmasking the Truth on your radio station today educates you on supporting survivors and holding rapists accountable. Mercy, how should we hold rapists accountable for their evil act? Because these different categories of people that we've looked at, they all have one thing in common, and it is infringing on someone else's right. Going out of your way, either due to the resources that you have or the relationship that you have, just taking advantage, undue advantage of somebody else. One crime in common, and that is rape, Mercy.
Thank you for that question. If I got your question right, you're asking me how can we hold perpetrators accountable?
Yes.
I always say this, the state has a very huge role to play.
Hello, Mercy, are you there? Hello, Mercy, can you hear me? Oh, we'll try to reconnect with Mercy in a bit. I think she's experiencing some kind of network downtime. Yes, Mercy, are you back on? Okay. All right. Mercy will join us in a bit. In the meantime, let's hear from more women and what they have to say.
Níwòye tèmi, ìdí tí àwọn ará ìlú fi máa ń dá àwọn ọmọbìnrin tí wọ́n bá fipá bá lòpọ̀ lẹ́bi, òun ni pé ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn ará ìlú máa ń fojú wò pé obìnrin tí wọ́n bá fipá bá lòpọ̀ ó múra lọ́nà àìtọ́ ni, tàbí ó ń wo ọkùnrin lọ́nà tí ò yẹ kó wò ni, tàbí bó ṣe ń sọ̀rọ̀, bó ṣe ń rìn níwájú ọkùnrin, òun ló fà á tí ọkùnrin náà fi bá lò pọ̀. Ọ̀nà tí mo sì wò pé a lè gbà gẹ́gẹ́ bí ará ìlú láti lè jà fún àwọn obìnrin tí wọ́n ti kó sí páńpẹ́ ìfipábánilòpọ̀ yìí, òun ni kí a dìde, kí a gbárùkù tì wọ́n. Àwọn tó bá ní agbẹjọ́rò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́, kí a sọ̀rọ̀ wọn fún agbẹjọ́rò náà, kí wọ́n jà fún. A ní ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ àwọn ajàfẹ́tọ̀ọ́ obìnrin ládùúgbò, ká fi ọ̀rọ̀ wọn lọ àwọn ajàfẹ́tọ̀ọ́ obìnrin kí wọ́n sì jà fún irú ẹni bẹ́ẹ̀. Kò ń ṣe wípé kí a máa fojú wò pé eléyìí wọ́n ti fipá bá lò pọ̀, ẹlẹ́ṣẹ̀ ní kinní kan. Irú nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ kò yẹ kó máa ṣẹlẹ̀, àfi káya gbárùkù tì wọ́n. Eléyìí gan yóò tún dẹ́kun ìfipábánilòpọ̀ láwùjọ wa ni.
So I like the fact that this last woman that we spoke to just highlighted the fact that we have a lot of women rights group who are actually very, very much active in the fight against rape and every form of sexual harassment, sexual exploitation. Now, this is one education that we really need to give people. So when issues like this start, when it happens, you know exactly where to go to. You know what to do just before you get the necessary or the professional help. As much as possible, there is need for every sphere in the society to ensure that there is some kind of education that is given to children from the get-go. Yes, there are age-appropriate information that you can tell your child when it has to do with being exploited sexually. We're talking about rape. Some people feel too comfortable with people around them. Oh, he's my brother. He's my cousin. He's my uncle. My child is safe with him. How are you sure that your child is safe with this person? We live in a very fast-paced society. We live in a very fast-paced world whereby everybody's working, trying to earn an honest living. But we forget about the children in our care. Even as adults, older women, you get to hear different cases of people breaking into homes and raping older women. And you're wondering exactly to what end. So this tells you that it is not about the survivor. It is not about the victim. It is about the rapist. It is about them. And we need to come together as a society to ensure that our voice is heard. Do not for any reason try to hide or cover any perpetrator of rape. Because what you're just doing is breeding and allowing for more survivors. Allowing for the rights of other women to be infringed on if you don't speak. I recall the case of a woman who spoke about how her child was raped by her brother. And all of the family members kept telling her, oh yes, don't speak. Don't say anything. Do you want your brother to go to jail? How are you going to feel knowing that your brother went to jail because of your daughter? Now, the pressure to want to keep the families in court good name. She could not speak up for her daughter. She really felt bad when her daughter started asking her certain questions, and she could not find reasons to support her daughter. According to this woman, she really felt bad. Yes, Mercy, you were talking about how and why we should hold rapists accountable for their evil act. Hello, Mercy, are you there?
Yes, I'm back. I'm sorry
All
for
right.
that.
That's fine.
That's a problem. Yeah.
So we're talking about holding rapists accountable for their evil act. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know where you stopped hearing me, but I was saying that, you see, I think one of the wrongest assumptions we have is that the rapist is somebody unknown to the victim or to the survivor, right? We have the assumption that it's a random act that can occur at any point, right? Meanwhile, most statistics actually shows that the rapist is closer to you than you actually think. During the pandemic, we saw a spike in rape and sexual assault cases that the Governors Forum of Nigeria had to declare a state of emergency on sexual violence in Nigeria. That's how bad it was, because for the first time in history, most people had to live with their abusers, right? You had no other choice because of the pandemic. Now, when we talk about holding perpetrators accountable, there's a lot that goes into dismantling the stereotypes that exist. And the only way to do this is by sensitization. There's no other way. We have to put in the work. The state has to put in the work. The government has to put in the work. Even with attaining the policies, right, that are already on ground. So when we talk about law enforcement, we think it's just police doing the work. No, all of us are part of enforcing. If you see something, for lack of better phrasing, right, if you see something, say something. We are equally all partisan to how this crime is being perceived. Let me state here that crimes take a social norm, like a social status, right? Depending on the society, you'll find that the crime can adapt to what the society allows. For instance, we like to think that corruption is a Nigerian problem. No, there's corruption all over the world. Everywhere, even the biggest countries in the world. But there's a reason why it doesn't thrive as much as it thrives here. The same thing goes for sexual violence as well. So we have to create a society, a safe space where victims or survivors rather can talk about what has happened to them. I don't know if you heard me when I was talking about the statistics that you mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah, I did.
And how that's just the statistics we have on ground. That's not the entire number, because people don't feel safe. Most times you go, I've heard people that have even gone to police to report this case and they say, oh, it's a family issue, resolve it internally.
Yeah.
But if we do not talk about it, I know it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, but we have to deal with uncomfortable issues, whether we like it or not. We have to own up to these issues. These are problems that our society faces, and we need to deal with it. Most times we like to think women are the only victims, but more statistics show that men too can equally be victims of sexual violence as well. So it takes a whole village. It takes thought, it takes sensitization, it takes a lot of work from civil society organizations as well to hold the government accountable on the policies made and the efforts put to tackling this crime.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mercy. We hear from some women.
Èmi ò ní ìdí tí mo fi lè bú ẹni tí wọ́n rape, kò sí ìdí fún un nítorí wípé kì í ṣe ìfẹ́ inú ẹ̀ ìní. Ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kejì, àwọn míì tí wọ́n sì lè rape, àwọn tá bá ṣe lè gbìjà àwọn tí a rape. Number 1, kó kọ́kọ́ lọ report ní police station. Téèyàn bá report ní police station, táwọn ọlọ́pàá ò bá fi ọwọ́ dandan mú un. Àwọn kan wà tó jẹ́ wípé wọ́n máa ń gbìjà obìnrin tó yẹ pé inú wọn máa ń dùn sí irú kéèsì báyẹn kó wọ́n lọ report káwọn òbí rẹ̀ tàbí tó yẹ pé ẹni tó bá sì ti dàgbà náà ni kó lọ report straight, so wọ́n á lè mú irú ọkùnrin yẹn, wọ́n á fi jófin, wọ́n á lè mú yóò sún ẹ̀wọ̀n. Téèyàn bá sì jẹ́ wípé ẹni tó ṣe dáadáa kéèyàn gbé lọ sí court, kò sí nǹkan tó burú bẹ́ẹ̀ torí nǹkan tó ṣe, torí obìnrin yẹn láyé rẹ̀ kò ní gbàgbé feelings yẹn, torí kì í ṣe nǹkan tó rọrùn, kò lè gbàgbé feelings yẹn láíláí.
Of course, we know the trauma that comes with rape. So when a woman is raped, that's not the time to apportion blame. This woman should not be raped. She should not be blamed for being raped, and she should not have even been raped in the first place. At that point, we need to support her, we need to hold her. We need to report the perpetrator and find justice. The perpetrator needs to be held responsible and made to face the consequences of his action. Now you've heard from different women. This is what the women think on the street. Some women actually know where to go to when it happens. Some do not know. Now the question is, what are you doing within the confine of your space to ensure that more women are enlightened and that you actually support survivors in speaking up? Thank you very much, Mercy, for joining us on the conversation today. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Yes, there we have it. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Rapists are threats to our communities and will remain so unless we start to make them uncomfortable by naming and shaming them. We must continue to condemn rapists, expose them. Our traditional rulers, faith rulers must preach against this using their platforms and making rapists uncomfortable. If you have a story on how corruption and lack of accountability affects women in your community that you would like to share with us, please share your comment via text or WhatsApp to 070-317-56537. Unmasking the Truth from the Gender Lens is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Thank you to the production team of Nafisat Abdulaziz, Taiwo Adeleye, Esther Koitilo, and the executive producer Tom Okewale Shonaya. My name is Esther Alaribi. When you see something, say something and do something.
Àwọn obìnrin jẹ́ ìdajì níye àwọn tó wà ní orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà, síbẹ̀ wọ́n ń jìyà ìyàsọ́tọ̀ ní ọlọ́kanjọ̀kan. Ènìyàn tó bá sì ní àléébù lára ni wọn kì í sábà ṣe pàtàkì lọ́pọ̀ ìgbà. Ní ọdún 2021, àtúngbéyẹ̀wò òfin lórí ìbí kò yọ ohunkóhun sẹ́yìn láì bójú wò. Bákan náà ni kò fọwọ́ sí ìyàsọ́tọ̀, ìwà ipá àti àìní àìkàsí, ṣùgbọ́n fọwọ́ sí ìbí òjùbí nípasẹ̀ ṣíṣe àfikún pípèsè ohun tó bá yẹ fún àwọn tó bá ṣe aláìní. Gbogbo wa la ní ipa láti kó láti lè rí dájú wípé ìbí pẹ̀lú lára ohun ìdàgbàsókè lónìí lọ sórí ẹ̀rọ ayélujára láti lọ wo ẹ̀kúnrẹ́rẹ́ ìbí lórí www.rapanigeria.org. Àtẹ̀jíṣẹ́ yìí wá láti ọ̀dọ̀ Women's Right Advancement and Protection Alternative RAPA pẹ̀lú ìfọwọ́sowọ́pọ̀ iléeṣẹ́ ìjọba àpapọ̀ tó ń rí sí ọ̀rọ̀ àbójútó àwọn obìnrin pẹ̀lú àtìlẹ́yìn MacArthur Foundation.
WFM 91.7